With a 6.3 litre V8 crate motor, a custom MITS alloy tray and canopy setup, a custom trimmed interior, and one of the most exceptional 40 series bodies in the country, this is truly a one-of-a-kind artwork. Today, we're going to be taking a thorough look through it and see exactly what makes this the top 40 series Landcruiser in Australia. You probably know that this car has been kicking around the Sparesbox workshop for a couple of years, getting worked on by a friend of Sparesbox's and a friend of ours, James. And I've got to say, mate, you've got to be stoked because this thing is absolutely epic. And most of the work was carried out by James at Group Historics, who's a fantastic mechanic and loves his historic vehicles. And well, overall, it's been a collaboration of a whole lot of different businesses coming together and creating absolute automotive artwork. Let's take a look. At the front of this car, there is so much to talk about. Under here, what's around that, the front, I'm gonna try to remember everything. I've got some notes on my phone and I've been doing some reading up because I've got to be honest, some of this stuff we started 4 years ago and I've completely forgotten. Now the front of this car, I've got to say, is one of my favorite places. It's so iconic. The shape of 40 series, whether it's the wagons, the shorties or the utes, is just fantastic. And probably the most obvious thing you guys are seeing and wondering is why we kept this on an original 40 chassis. Why is it still leaf sprung when realistically coils and something like an 80 series chassis would probably be the obvious choice to handle the power that we're trying to put down. Now, don't get me wrong, I tried. I pushed so hard for an 80 series chassis. I even had one ready to go for this project, but I lost that argument. And you know what? In a way, I'm kind of happy because the leaf springs are such an iconic look at the front of these cars, coming right up the front to where the bar protrudes to. So, you know what? I'm actually not upset that I lost that argument. Now, this looks like a factory bar, but it is not. It is actually a reinforced bar by McKinnon's Customs, and it basically allows us to mount a winch up the front. Now, we didn't want to go a big high mount winch, so we actually ended up just putting a 9,500 pound DriveTech dual speed winch in here, but attention to detail is what this build was all about, and you can see the actual winch bracing and the housing has been painted in that sort of June beige sandy taupe colour to match the vehicle. We've also got these amazing original Toyota yellow fog lamps. Now these were actually a factory option back in the day, and we actually found a set thankfully, and I've got to say I reckon it just makes the front of this vehicle that sort of historic retro, I guess paying homage to it. You know, they put out a little bit of light too, so they're not totally useless. We've also got a little sneaky mod as well. Obviously, this vehicle is all about form, but it also had to function. So as well as having the winch and that kind of thing, we have a little GME bracket that folds up to reveal a little 3.3 dBi GME antenna, which goes to the XRS Connect in the cab. So you actually it's totally capable to go full driving and camping, have comms with your group and that kind of thing out of this vehicle, which I absolutely love. But because, just quietly, I think it ruins the aesthetic, let me remember how to use things. We'll just fold that away. Obviously 40 series grille and all that sort of thing. We've got some nice Nava brand new lenses in here as well, which helps tidy things up. And we actually also had to play around with different indicators on the fenders and actually different Toyota badges and sort of pick the best looking pair out of all the series and all the generations, because obviously over the 40 series range, the indicators and the side guard badges changed a fair bit. So we went with the least of all the evils. Now you're probably wondering how this thing looks so good, and so am I. It's because of my gym routine and diet. Not me, just kidding, the car. So the bodywork was painstakingly done by Bellina Bodyworks here in Sydney. I've got to be honest guys, this is straight off the gun. He hasn't even buffed this back, and it is unbelievable. It is so fantastic. And if you know 40 series Landcruisers, they're about 50 plus years old and pretty much completely with rust. This thing was the same and was pretty much fed. Every panel was damaged, dented, surface rust, if not worse. The floor had holes all through it, nothing lined up. and the guys at Berliner absolutely nailed this. And we've done a lot of little touches. This is the original color that came on the car, June beige, which is fantastic. And we went with this sort of just off-white, more of a cream on the front bezel and the roof, which, speaking of, the roof is actually all metal, no fiberglass replacements here. Now you're probably wondering, I mentioned the V8 earlier. Let's jump under this bonnet and take a look at exactly what we've done in here, because I've got to be honest, you've never seen an engine bay quite like this. This is probably my favorite point of the entire build, the engine, this 6.3 litre work of art. You know what? We never did things by halves, and that's exactly why we went with this motor. The owner originally wanted an AMG V8, which just wasn't going to be possible to maintain that part-time four-wheel drive functionality and manual gearbox that he wanted. So the next best thing was an LS-based motor and make it look nothing like an LS, and that's why we went with this sort of setup. Started off with notching the firewall, which is a pretty unconventional way of doing things, but we wanted to push the motor as far back as we could to not only get the weight behind that front axle, but to also allow maximum sump clearance. Modified sump, it's an LS1 short block, which is from LSX Performance, LS3 heads, bored and stroked 6.3 litres with a billet crank. It's got a spicy little cam package in there as well, plus this Edelbrock manifold with twin 100+ throttle bodies. Then made it up to these AMG airboxes to help give it that AMG Mercedes look that he was after. Keeping everything cool, we have a massive Australian-made PWI radiator, 12-volt thermo fan, and a whole bunch of other little niceties in here as well. We've got the winch controller hidden under here, nice aeroflow washer bottles. All the wiring was taken care of by Mario and Josh at Amped Automotive. Obviously 80 series booster to help get this thing engineered and stopped, because I've got to be honest, she ain't light. Other little things that we've changed up as well. We put some hood lining on here because otherwise, you know, 40 series, they're pretty agricultural. And one of my favorite things, and this is a James Group Historic special, was that central gas strut on the bonnet. Now these things normally just come with, you know, the old school sort of stick only on the one side, but what that means is the bonnet sits really skew-if when you do have it up and it's all twisted up. And for a car that's going to be photographed everywhere it goes, that wasn't an option. So that's actually out of a 70s Alfa Romeo, and we made it fit this engine bay. I've got to say, this whole thing turned out absolutely gorgeously, and it sounds amazing. We ran it up on the dyno with the team at Springwood Auto Care and made over 400 horsepower at the rear wheels and a buttload of torque. So it's going to have no issues moving this Roman chariot suspension. And one of the biggest hurdles for this car was getting it engineered and keeping it completely legal. To start things off with, we upgraded the front and converted them to disc brakes, which is why the wheel track's slightly larger, running 200 series front calipers and a big slotted and vented rotor. And that's just to help this thing stop in the brake test that it will inevitably have to pass. The front and rear diffs are True Tracks installed by Speedy Diffs, and that's to help put the power down on the ground and keep it driving nice on the road. We've gone with a pretty simple formula leaf spring setup, which is sort of a standard height to 1-inch lift, mostly because, again, we wanted it to be stable, drive nice, and the owner's not especially tall. So keeping it a little bit lower to the ground is definitely a big help, and we've just gone with some basic Coney shocks to help it ride nicely. The chassis was obviously not in the best shape, and like I said, nothing was left alone on this vehicle. So it was stripped, zinc coated, and then powder coated for that longevity, strength, and I reckon the chassis of this thing's going to outlast the owner itself. In terms of exhaust, coming off those custom headers in the engine bay, it's got a full 3-inch system all the way to the back, which is ADR compliant. It's got full emissions controls and a charcoal canister in there with a whole bunch of mufflers. It's got hot dog resonators and even has catalytic converters in it still. Still sounds great under load, but we had to shut that big noisy V8 up somehow. The fuel tank was also modified to accept an Aeromotive Phantom drop-in fuel pump, and it's all controlled by a GFB fuel regulator with custom fuel lines and custom brake hard lines, front to rear, all the way up into the engine bay. Wheels and tyres, we went with a pretty simple setup. It's just got some BFG KO2 all-terrains on there in a nice legal size on some factory 2017, I believe, Hilux Steelies, which are not only easy to come by, affordable, strong as all heck, but it sort of helps suit that sort of vintage historic look we're going for the vehicle. Now anyway, I reckon we go check out my second favourite part of this vehicle, the gorgeous interior. It had a custom retrim and it looks absolutely exceptional. Well, SRK Customs have absolutely nailed the interior of this car. Like you'd expect, we didn't leave anything alone and we had to add our own little flavour to this vehicle, and it looks absolutely incredible in here. You probably know that 40 series are pretty agricultural inside, not generally any aircon, no power steering, definitely no leather seats, not even any carpet. We had to fix all that and make this place a nice spot to be in. Starting with the roof, obviously it's that metal roof that we had trimmed in a hood liner with sun visors to match, which looks amazing. Coming down, we wrapped these little dash pieces in leather too, just to help sort of nicen up the front. Nardi custom trim steering wheel, which leads down into this amazing interior. These are actually vintage Recaro seats that we had custom trimmed by SRK Customs, a completely custom center console made cup holder, a full 240 volt Marshall amplifier set up in here as well, with a 350 watt projector inverter helping power it. We've obviously got this gorgeous carpet, and if you're wondering, for those playing along at home, if you're looking to custom trim or upholster a 40 series floor plan, don't do it, because it was an absolute nightmare. We've also got the full Icon digital dash, which helps monitor everything and runs to the factory ECU. The door cards are completely custom too and have been made to suit the rest of the vehicle. We've got Blue Eye Motorsport switches, and we welded up all unnecessary holes in the dash as well. So now we're running things like fog lights, washers, hazards and that kind of thing through those switches. And we've also got a couple of spares if he chooses to add accessories. And obviously Australia gets pretty hot in summer, and with a spicy little 6.3 V8 under your feet at the front, the cab was going to get hot. So we did run a lot of car builders sound deadening, heat deadening in this cab to help take some of the resonance out of it, including in the doors and on the rear wall here. Plus we've got the Vintage Air aircon, which is both going to air condition. We also running the heater through it, and it's going to really cool this cabin down. It's going to work really well. Obviously there's a lot of wiring going on in here, given the old car had almost no technology in it. So the team at Amped Automotive, Mario and Josh, absolutely killed it with that. Anyway, that's the interior done. Well done to everyone involved. It is an absolute glamour in here. Let's go check out this Aussie-made custom MITS alloy tray and canopy setup, because it's got just about every mod con you could ever want. Well, if you know four-wheel drives and you know 4x4 accessories, you've probably heard the name MITS Alloy. And we got very lucky with getting a tray and canopy for this vehicle, because put simply, they don't do them. And that's because pretty much no 40 series, no 240 series are the same. The chassis change and twist, and people modify tray mounts over the years, and it's just an absolute disaster. But we were very lucky. So huge thanks to Tim, Jacko, Azza, Hazza. I'm not dropping the most Australian rap you've ever heard. They're the names of the people that helped get this across the line. So huge thank you. This thing, Australian made, is absolutely decked to the brim. Every bell and whistle you could possibly imagine. All the 12 volt fit out was done by Josh and Mario at Amped Automotive, like the rest of the vehicle. We've got all the red arc fruit in here, all the Enerdrive gear, and well, it's just a lovely place to store your gear and go camping, to be quite honest with you. Like a lot of MITS setups, we've got the water tanks. It's around 100 or just over litres of drinking water capacity. It's also got a 12 volt water pump there too, and the tap on the other side just under the fill point. We've got all the toolboxes as well, and in this front one here, we're actually running the cranking battery for the motor, because as you're probably aware, there wasn't a lot of space in the engine bay for a huge battery like that. In this battery behind, in this toolbox behind me, we're running a twin ARB compressor, which is going to help pump up the tyres, blow up the rooftop tent, and that kind of thing when you do go camping. Going around the back, we've got a big lockable trundle drawer, which is as much space as we could fit while still having the under tray water tank in there as well. And like I mentioned, it's lockable, so you can put guns in there, ammunition, fishing rods, all that kind of gear. If you don't have any of that, chuck your spare parts in there. It's a good place to keep them. Above that, mounted to the back of the canopy, we've got a spare tyre, a jerry can holder. You can put drinking water or 98 in there, because, well, God knows this big LS likes a drink. And the ladder is permanently mounted there too, which is awesome. It folds down, which makes getting into that Motop V3 rooftop tent even easier. Fold the ladder down, climb up, pop it open, and away you go. The Motop's a great option for rooftop tents because it is slim, it's affordable, it's comfortable, and well, it makes getting to camp, setting up an absolute breeze. It's literally a couple of clasps, it pops up on gas struts, and you're good to go. In the canopy, there's a whole bunch of technology. Starting off, central locking, dimmable LED camp lights all through the interior, a massive amount of storage on this side. The other side's probably more so the living side, and I'd say this is the tech side. We've got all the red arc gear you can poke a bloody stick at. Manager 30, full red vision control system, 200 amp hour Enerdrive lithium battery setup. We've got remote controls for all the 12 volt sockets, Anderson plugs, 240 volt remote power points as well. And everything's controlled through the red vision, which is sick too. I reckon we go have a look at the beer side, the cooking side, and well, my favourite bit, the food side.
Over here is my favourite side of the car, and that's because this is where all the yummy boys are prepared. We've got kick-ass 12-volt oven, gets up to 180 degrees and is perfect for pie, sausage rolls, roasts, reheating dinner and that kind of thing. And I think in a setup like this is absolutely welcome. Just short of a microwave. Huge pantry space, big slide out prep bench as well, which is fantastic. It's a good height with the current setup. We're utilizing a big clear view drop slide so you can get easy access to the 75 litre dual zone Dometic fridge. And I think the Dometic is the perfect fridge and the best size, because for this sort of thing, perfect for those week or longer trips, and you can run one side as a deep freezer with all your cryovac meat and the other side as a normal fridge. We've also got the slide on clear view table for the drop slide too, which helps just give a little bit of extra space. You can make drinks and that kind of thing on it. Obviously back here, we've got all the MITS alloy gear. It's all custom made for this setup, including that fridge cage, which just helps stop stuff falling down behind the slide, which is one of the biggest pet peeves I have when camping and when I was using a fridge slide. We've also got a whole bunch more 12-volt sockets up on the wall here so you can charge your phones and that kind of thing. And obviously the Dometic's got a built-in USB charger too. And on this side, the same as the other side, you've got LED dimmable lighting and central locking. Plus you've got access to those 100 litres of drinking water via the tap just here down by my left side. I reckon the last thing to show you guys is how easy that tent pops up, the camping setup. We'll call it a day. Well, the beautiful thing about a clamshell rooftop tent is how easy it is to open and set up when you get to camp. The gas struts basically do all the work. And even though we've got the roof racks on with that 200 watt red arc solar panel, it does it with ease. And the beautiful thing about having the solar panel on the top, especially on a rooftop tent that opens like this, is you can angle it towards the sun and get the first rays of the days and start charging up that 200 amp hour battery. If you guys reckon this is a pretty good way to spend $250,000, let us know in the comments below, because just quietly, I'd agree with you. I think this thing is pretty darn epic. If you have any other questions, leave a comment. I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, make sure you like and subscribe.
Sound speed.
Speeding.
Camera rolling.
Rolling.
All right, and slate it.
Take 10,000.
And action. Sam, read the fucking script.
Oh, the script, yes, I see. Okay, where are we at here? Sparesbox.